Welcome to the Authentic Dentist Podcast. Join Dr. Allison House of House Dental in Scottsdale and Shawn Zajas, founder of Zana, a company helping dentists extend their care beyond the chair as they lead dentists deeper along the journey of authenticity to reach greater fulfillment in their professional lives and to deliver remarkable patient experiences. At the core of the Authentic Dentist is a belief that the answer to the current challenges in dentistry is dentists discovering that their greatest asset and point of differentiation is their personal brand, and that forming that brand out of their authentic selves is the best strategy for success in dentistry today.
Hey guys, this is Shawn Zajas and Dr. Allison House with the Authentic Dentist Podcast. And this is just a continuation on this little kind of series we're doing where instead of just talking about different topics that we normally do, we're actually kind of letting you guys in to the journey that we're on right now. In the last few weeks, we've talked about how if we're going to step into a new season or write a new chapter of a book, we need to change the language and the vocabulary we use so that certain words just aren't permitted anymore. Words that might be associated with limiting beliefs or lack. And at the same time, embrace words that maybe expand us or get us to believe for that new thing we're doing. And last week live, we covered belief and belief centers and kind of how the difference is like belief is what gets, born out of our belief centers, which is more like the soil. Like, do we have good soil? Is it fertilized? Is it hard ground or is it soft? Where all of a sudden a new idea comes in, a new conception of what's possible comes in and it's able to take root and get nurtured. It doesn't get snuffed out by the weeds of unbelief or cynicism or being jaded. But the whole point of why we're talking about any of this is because we want to accomplish the dreams that are on our heart for impact to make a difference. So today it's going to be a little bit more about action and what we're doing to make that difference and to make that change.
Yeah. So you and I talked about how do you put things into, once you believe that you're going to do something, how do you make it happen? And I was talking about at the beginning of the year, we set our goals. So I'd actually do 3 of these in January. I do one with my husband, just the 2 of us. I do one with my office, and then I do one with a bunch of people that I mentor. And we set goals for the year. And the goals are not allowed to be like pie in the sky. They have to be something that's actually accomplishable in 1 year. And then, we have 5 categories: health, professional, education, spiritual, and I can't remember the other one, but there's 5 of
So
them.
how long have you been doing this?
About 15 years now.
Wow. And always the 3 different times, like you're doing with your team, you're doing it with your husband. I kind of forgot the third group.
The kids.
Oh, okay.
Kids. And now I say that those people are now almost 30. But we started when they were teenagers. And we just, at first I did it with just my office. And then my husband has his own business. So we discovered that it was good for him and then personally. And then we found that our kids needed those goals too. And it was interesting because the kids would sometimes do something that was impossible to do in a year. And so you had to set a smaller goal, or we're going to accomplish this year. And then maybe next year you can do more, but you can only do so much in a year, but you can do a lot in a year. It's amazing how much you can accomplish in a year if you put your mind to it.
I think the adage goes, people drastically underestimate what they can, no, they overestimate what they can do in like 30 days, but they underestimate what they can do in a year, which means like in the micro, we're kind of always like, oh yeah, no, I can do all of that. It's like, you really can't. But then in the macro, we're like, oh no, there's no way I could get something like that done. It's like, well, no, you really can. If you just keep staying steady and break it apart, you can get a lot done in a year.
You can get a lot done in a year. And then you set something, at the end of the year, you're going to celebrate some of those goals too.
Okay, so when it comes to like, here we are, and we've identified part of this whole thing is like the big leap was Gay Hendricks, I think is the author. It's about addressing your upper limit problem, which is like, what is that thing that keeps stepping in to sabotage you from, I don't know, really like possessing the land, so to speak, that you haven't possessed yet. So again, to get biblical, I didn't know this is going to keep happening, but the idea that like, the Israelites wandered, but they at some point were supposed to possess their promised land. And yet there was these giants in the promised land. And some people were like, oh, we can't do that. There's giants. And other people saw like the opportunity. And I think that's, I think it was true. But metaphorically speaking, I think it's also true of where we want to go to actualize, to be who we're called to be for fulfillment. I think oftentimes there are these giants that are kind of guarding it, whether it's intimidating us, like, hey, you're not ready, whether it's a readiness issue, whether it's a, look, you have a history of how you failed in the past, and you're acutely aware of that. And that's the story you keep telling yourself, which goes back to, what we're saying, what we're believing. But all of this converges with like, yeah, but I need to step into this. I want to step into this. Like the next decade of your life, you really can just keep doing what you've done because you've been wildly successful. It's working for you. But is there a dimension, or is there an aspect, or is there something you're wanting to possess or step into and manifest that maybe, I don't know, it's like almost like territory that you haven't had access to yet. And how do you get access to it? Does that make sense, or is that a little too abstract?
You're getting a little abstract for me. I think that, yes, we all have these dreams, but sometimes we talk ourselves out of them. And that's never good. But it's also this, like, you have a dream, but you don't have a plan. And you have to have a plan. Otherwise, you're going to fail. And then you have that failure that you're nurturing too. So you can't do that. So whenever you set a goal, it has to be a realistic goal. And so when I talked about the kids, when my son was 15 years old, he wanted to start a tutoring business. He was really good at math. He liked math. But he didn't have a car and he didn't have a license. So there was no way for him to get to those appointments, and I had to drive him, and I only had so much time. So his dream of setting this business, it really couldn't happen when he was 15. But he started it, and he started the advertising, and he did some of it. But at 16, he was really able to make that happen because he'd done so many things to create it. So I guess that's what I mean by some things are not necessarily possible in 1 year. But as you accumulate whatever it is you need, your driver's license, you can get to the point where you can make things happen. There are other things that absolutely can be done in a year. My daughter wanted to learn how to speak French. So she took French in high school, and then she did the Duolingo, I think that's what it is. Anyway, she did all kinds of things to learn. And then the next summer, she went to France for a month, and she was immersed. And so then she could speak French. But that was one of her goals, and she was able to accomplish it, but not necessarily in 1 year because she couldn't go to France that summer.
Okay, so we're looking at something that maybe isn't super clear. Like, you are a practicing dentist. You've been doing that for over 20 years?
24 years.
I
Yeah.
was like,
Flies by.
that's crazy. And yet, let's say, as you're getting freed up, because all of a sudden your kids, like you said, they're not kids anymore. They're young adults. They're adults they're independent now. You and your husband can now, I don't know, just dream about what are you wanting to do in this next phase. And part of that next phase might be more of how you're influencing, which you've already done a lot of that with being president, even how you're serving right now. But there might be a part of that you want to step into and occupy that you've just never done before. So looking forward, it's like, you're going to have to maybe carve out time.
There also has to be some clarity. Like, what is it that you want to accomplish? You can't be amorphous about it. And sometimes it has to evolve. So sometimes one of the goals is I need to get clarity about what it is that I want to do next. But yeah, once you have some clarity, then yeah, you can set a plan in motion on what you want. I went to this class, a parenting class, when the kids were 8, 9 years old. And they said, you need to have a plan for your kids. And I was like, okay, I don't like that. My kids are who they are. She said, no. What you want to do is you want to look at who you want them to be and then you create opportunities for them to grow into that person. Okay, interesting. So one of the things I wanted for my kids, I wanted them to be able to start something and complete it. And I wanted them to be able to stop doing something that didn't work for them. And so when you look at that at 9 years old and you have until they're 18, then you can create opportunities for them to learn those lessons so that when they leave you, they have those lessons. So that was part of the plan. It wasn't a concrete plan, but you could see that's the goal. This is who I want my children to be, even though I didn't want them to go to Harvard. That wasn't my life, but I wanted them to have these abilities, these understandings of the world. And so you had to create that.
Well, and I love that has like it's transferable, meaning if I'm doing something that I'm stuck in, how do I get out of that? And if I want to go after something and attain something, how do I learn how to, meaning it's not like you said, specific destination specific, where it's like, I want to go to Harvard, or here's a specific thing that in case I miss that mark, I feel like a failure, instead of, well, no, I cultivated something that's going to create resilience or an overcoming spirit. And that's what I know how to do, regardless of what the specifics are. And that's probably why you are so good at kind of overcoming or succeeding, is that you figured out how to equip yourself so that you can thrive regardless of what challenge you're faced with. But do you feel like you are in a place right now? Not, I mean, I don't care if we get specific now, where it's not like 10 years ago you knew, hey, I'm still going to be doing clinical dentistry for a long time, so I'm going to keep getting CE. Like the path forward and the road ahead of you is pretty clear. It's like, this is what you do as a dentist. You maybe
Sure.
you try to, like, I'm a dentist and I'm learning more. Like, there's safe, like, meaning it's not like there's a million different paths where you're a dentist now. It's like, should I do the one thing that no one's ever done before? And like, it's not
There are actually a million different paths that you can take.
I agree.
But
But
you're
are
right.
you catching what I'm trying to?
It's a narrower path than perhaps somebody who's in business where like you could do anything.
Right. And all I meant by that is like Uber, for example, before Uber it's like, as he's thinking, as his team and people that are founding it are thinking about what Uber could be, it's like, well, that idea didn't exist. So there is a million different ways they could have applied that model in a nuanced way. And then now all of a sudden when Lyft comes along, well, it's more of a copycat kind of thing. And I'm just saying dentistry is so established, and yeah, technology changes it. The marketplace changes, nuances with different marketing. All those things are just more nuanced, but pretty clear. You kind of knew what you were going to be doing. I feel like you're going to be stepping into being more of a speaker. I guess you could say there's a traditional path there as well.
There's a traditional path, but I would say I don't seem to be following it. I think that I really do like that mentorship piece because I've done so much of it, and the speaking seems like a natural thing of it, but it isn't as clear for me. I'm trying to set that clarity this year on what does that look like? Do I really want to be on the speaking circuit, or would I prefer to have like a group of people that I'm mentoring? I spend a lot of time with young dentists teaching them how to run their business, because I started my business from scratch. I made a ton of mistakes. And so I try and share that with people. So there's a lot of clarity that has to happen as you're creating your plan.
Yeah, no, I'm like just trying to.
But back to the goal setting, once you set your goals, then you have to have your plan. And like, I think we always talk about sport or lifting or changing your body. You can change your body in a year. You can do dramatic things to your body in a year. But you also have to look, well, if I have 18 other things I want to accomplish, I'd like to learn a language. Well, then you have to be realistic. Do you have time to invest in that? And if you're going to really make a transformation anywhere, you have to have the time. And you have to actually set aside the time and create that.
Okay, so that's interesting to me, because that almost goes against, maybe these don't have conflict, but to me they do seemingly. There's some people that are very intuition based that are like, hey, I've interviewed a lot of people with
You've done a lot of interviews. It's been very cool.
Meaning, and I ask them about their journey and their story and their breakthrough and kind of their path. And a lot of them say yes because you don't know when there's going to be that open door. And it just kind of made sense. And I knew, and I said yes. And I'm so thankful that I said yes. And then there's this aspect of, yeah, but if you say yes to so many things, you really can't accomplish any of them because you can't do 10, 20 things at the same time. Well, you can only have a few commitments. And they're not saying that. But I'm just wondering, when that big yes maybe presents itself, maybe you have to close other doors, smaller yeses, so that you can.
You have to. You have to. When you say yes to something big, then you have to decide what you're going to give up because you can't possibly do all of it. And it's not appropriate. I mean, you have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to still take care of yourself.
I lack that common sense.
What?
I do. I kind of feel like there's some inner superhero part of me that's like, oh, I like the idea, and maybe it's a dumb narrative of like doing the impossible. And I think growing up, I thrived when all odds were against me. Like, to get married, my parents had to graduate. They're like, we're not going to bless your marriage unless you graduate. And unfortunately, because I was wandering in college, I had a 2-year program left, but it was going into my 4th year of college. So I wanted to finish in 4 years. So I had to do a whole 2-year professional program in 1 year, which meant I had to go to the dean's office and get like 28 credit hours approved for.
Oh my God.
And they're looking at me like, you've only done 13 sometimes. You've done 15 and you didn't do that great. Why am I going to give you an override for 28? And I'm like, look, I'm smart. I just wasn't challenged and I didn't have a vision. I have a vision. I want to get married. Like, I'm going to be fine. And I made dean's list. It was my best semester ever. So there's part of that it's true, is that I almost do better when I have a lot that I have to handle because it challenges me. But then other times I get massively overwhelmed and disillusioned and I start too many things that I don't finish. And then I'm drowning in the sea of overwhelmness. Is there any part of that you can relate to?
I can relate to all of it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like you're more pragmatic.
Yes, but I have a few years on you. I've learned some hard lessons over time where I've said yes to something and then dropped the ball and been embarrassed or frustrated and felt like a failure. And so now time is a precious commodity to me. And so I really if I want to do something, then I want to do it. And I want to dedicate the time and effort to it. But I really have to be mindful of what I'm willing to dive into and what I'm willing not to, what I don't want to.
Okay, so I'm sure people are going to be like, oh, there's no such thing as a superhero complex. I'm just using that because I don't know what other word to use.
I think we all have that.
Well, I don't think, I think
world.
most people that are high achievers probably have that because they are capable. They want a challenge. They need to be pushed.
But if you take on too many things and then you fail, then you always seem to have that in your background where you know that you failed, but you don't realize that you failed because you were doing 12 things instead of the 3 that you should have been doing. And I think that we all have that until you learn those lessons.
I'm not saying I'm feeling judged right now, but I'm just wondering. It's like this epiphany moment of like, because there's 2 stories I tell myself. One is that I thrive in challenges. I thrive when things are craziest. Like I need to rise to the occasion. And yet it's not sustainable and predictable and consistent. I can't be consistent in that.
I bet it is. I bet it is. If you really look, you can say, okay, I am willing to dedicate this much time to my passion. And when I'm really pushed, I can dedicate this much time, but I can't dedicate this much time. And I fail when I get to that point. And if you really, I'm a data person. I really look at what's possible, what I'm physically capable of doing. And right now I am sort of pushed at my limit. This is the absolute most I can possibly do. And I know that. So I can't take on any more projects at the moment. But I can't, if I do, then something's going to fail. And I hate that. I let people down. But if I'm not doing enough, then I also don't do well with that.
So I'm wondering how this overlaps with back to that book. He's the one that's like, hey, zone of incompetence, zone of competence, zone of excellence, zone of genius. In my zone of genius, maybe that's where I am. It's almost like there's wind at my back. I get flow state.
And you can do so
I can do so much, but
So
then
cool.
there's other things that I don't realize are just in my zone of competence, and yet I set the stage to have to be genius in them in order to overcome them according to the same timeline. And all of a sudden I get disillusioned being like, why can't I? And that's where I think maybe I'm not as wise and discerning yet of like, Shawn, that's not in your center of capable where you can just crush it. And maybe I'm just conflating a few things, and that's why.
I think you're capable of doing absolutely anything you want to do, but it's where do you want to spend your time? You have 5 kids at home and you can't ignore them. I mean, you just can't. You have to be a father, and you want to be a father and a husband. And when you're in that season of your life, I'm not sure you can take on a huge project. You can take on a huge project. You can't take on 3, because you still have this responsibility that you want. And if you don't do that one, are you going to just not eat, not sleep, not exercise? There has to be some balance in your life. You can do this great thing and you're genius, and because you intellectually, you can do whatever you want to do, which is really cool. But you can't ignore the 5 kids because they'll only be there for so long.
So what is more common in your experience where you say no to a few things because you've already said yes to something, and then you realize, oh wow, I have more time? Or
It's never happened. It never happened.
okay, so you're typically always almost at red line, like
I am almost always
at capacity.
Yeah. When I get over red line, then I have to say, oh, now I have to drop this. And I hate that I have to drop this, but I have to.
So is that kind of like, in the past we've talked about burnout a ton. Do you think this is one of the main contributors to burnout? Is there's too much on my plate? I know there's a lot of factors, because there's also like, if you're getting busy doing the stuff that doesn't really matter or that you don't really care about, that you said yes to because maybe you felt like you had to or you ought to or you should, but it's not really aligned. Like, you could get burned out just going through the motions, even if it's not difficult. Like, I don't always think it has to do with redlining it, but that's also, if it is missional, if it is still on point, if it is still what you want to do, but it's just exhausting because you've said yes to too many things. I think all of those. I'm just tying it into, like, we've talked about burnout a few times, and you just said redlining it, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if.
But I also find if I'm doing too little, that I feel burned out because I don't feel like I'm accomplishing anything. I don't feel like I'm moving my life forward. So there's some kind of balance there where I'm working on something exciting, a project that's new and different, and I love that. But I can't go over the red line. But I actually don't like to be idle either, because that makes me uncomfortable too.
Okay, so I would love your perspective, because I don't really know. Maybe I am entrepreneurial. I was trying to think, like, I was going to say,
Absolutely.
well, on the spectrum of like more like CEO to entrepreneur, I know I'm way more entrepreneurial than I am CEO, because I think entrepreneurial people are more the creative, visionary people, less of the high level executive executors. I think I'd have to be more conscientious to be a CEO. But I identify as a creative, and because of that, there's always something I'm trying to build. So because of that, like, back to that whole kind of idea that I got of cycle time, since I was playing on the wrong cycle time, I could only create things that were able to be started, kind of have a start and finish probably within 3-4 weeks, because I was only on a week cycle time. But then every now and then it was carry on, and I could get something done a little bit longer than that. Have you been able to successfully, here's something that I need to take 6 months to do or 18 months to do, and I'm still going to, almost like even like when you implement a new technology? I forgot the most recent one that you were doing, but that took a long time.
It's taken me a long time. The 3D printing has taken me a long time to really figure out what I can and can't do.
Are we talking like 6 months or like 18 months? Of like, I know about it, now I'm learning about it, now I'm buying it, now I'm taking courses, now I'm actually doing it in my practice. What's that time period?
It's taken me about 18 months probably to really get it to where I wanted to go. And again, I set a goal in January that I wanted to do this. I did some research, but then I'm the sort of person I have to decide that I'm going to pull the trigger. Otherwise, I spend too much time doing the research.
But you gave yourself permission for 18 months, or were you not thinking it would be that long?
I guess I gave myself permission for 2 years. So
Oh,
for 6 months, I knew I was just going to go to classes. I was going to spend some time. I dedicated this much time to go to CE, to read, to watch videos, to try and figure out what I wanted here. And then I knew by the end of that year, I wanted to buy the technology. And then I was hoping that by the end of the next year, I would be able to implement it. And yeah, that's kind of how the way it worked. But I always have to set those goals that I have to pull the trigger at some point. But I'm different than you are. I'm not the creative. I'm definitely more the CEO, the conscientious. Everything is on a planned timeline, and that's not always a good thing. I think it's nice to have that creative
but
energy.
you
It's
are an
different.
artist.
I am, but I'm not creating things that have never been created before. That's not something I do. I'm much more meticulous. Oh, this has been done. How do I do it? How do I implement this? How do I make this tooth look the way I want it to look? How can I make my business look the way I want it to look? What is that? And how do I figure out what it is? I never create something that's never been created. That's a different energy. It's a different skill set. So maybe you are on some kind of different cycle.
Yeah. So to kind of like get it practical to where it's like pseudo workshopping is like, um, I think one of the things I'm identifying is that I um I get overly ambitious again about what I can do in like a month. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to build a course this month. And somewhere along the way, I hit something that's going to take a lot longer where I realize I didn't give myself enough time to hit the bar or to meet the standard that I expect. Remember, we were talking about it, I don't know when, but if you have good taste, as a skill of yours where you can actually almost like a curator knows how to curate good um, wines, food, music, whatever industry they're in, they know this is great, so I can curate. Well, if you know what great is, um, and then you're trying to do an endeavor to do something that's going to hit that target, but you still are underdeveloped in some sort of capability because it's not matured yet, like almost like to write a book. It's not just you have to be a good writer. You have to be a good researcher. You have to be good at organizing the ideas and all sorts of things. And maybe you're good at 4 out of the 5, but you didn't realize there's a fifth, and you just keep wondering why you keep hitting a stall. Well, I think the problem is I get things to 80% baked all the time, and then I hit a part where it's like I ran out of time, or some other fire comes up, or something else comes up, and then it just gets shelved. And I don't know whether I start something and get to 30% or whether I start something and get to 80%. You have enough of those in a year, and you waste a lot of time. Instead of saying, no, I don't need to start 5 or 6 things right now. And, over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to give myself 3 times more time, 12 weeks, and I'm going to focus on 1 or 2 things, and I'm going to get them finished. I think if I look back over the last 10, 12 years, it's like I'd have a lot more things that got launched or are tangible, or like, especially in the creative space where it's like content or courses, you either have something or you don't. Like there's no
But if you have something to 80%, I'm wondering, like, how come it couldn't get to 100? Like, I would want to analyze, and that's me. I'd analyze, why didn't I get to 100? What is that missing component? Am I missing a piece of education, and where could I get that? So I wouldn't start a new project. I'd pull all those old projects out and see, okay, well, what is it about them that made me stop here? One of the things, and this is not quite the same, but my office needed to be redecorated. This is not in my skill set. I do not decorate. I don't like to decorate. And I looked around and I went, I'm going to have to hire a decorator because I have no idea what to do here. And so I did. And she came in and she had wonderful ideas. Some of them were very, very expensive. And so I took all of her ideas and then I just gradually implemented them, knowing that it would take me a year to redecorate the office, little bits at a time. Some of it was big, like I'm having an install coming next week for new chairs, and because it needed to be done. But I'm too close to it. I couldn't figure it out, so I had to have somebody come in and help me. So I mean, I can see that I want to change, but I don't know like what that endpoint was.
Well, okay, so that kind of comes back to, in our pre-planning session, the idea of when we're doing something and endeavoring to do something, some of the stuff that we need to do doesn't fall within our
Your skill
capabilities.
set, yeah.
And I think part of the challenge is then figuring out like, um, I think for those people that are good at learning, you almost have to put like blinders on or clearly mark out, yes, but I'm not going to learn that. Or I'm
I
going to
don't
learn,
have that kind of time.
yeah, or I'm going to learn it enough so I can manage someone else or like learn it enough to know what, again, like I said, to know what good is and what bad is when it comes to design or when it comes to a marketer. Cause it's like, how can I hire a marketer if I don't have a clue what good marketing is? So it's like, you need to know enough. Um, and I think that's where I got in trouble is that I liked learning. I realized I could learn anything pretty quickly, through YouTube, through just online. And then all of a sudden, let's say you're doing a campaign. You know how many parts of a campaign there are? Like you first like need an offer. Like what is the thing you're trying to monetize? Is it an online course? Is it, your product business? Like with my electric toothbrushes. Okay. And then what is the specific thing people are saying yes to? What are the terms and conditions? What's pricing strategy? What's like a campaign strategy as far as like urgency, or is there scarcity? Is there bonuses? Is there a guarantee? There's all these parts of just an offer. But then it's
Wow.
like,
I didn't even know that.
but then it's like, well, yeah, but the offer doesn't matter if you don't get people, if you don't get leads, if you don't get eyeballs on whatever it is and this offer, how is it showing up? Is it showing up on a web page? Is it something that you're sharing when you're finally on a webinar with someone that's live? Is it on a group call? Like, how are you actually pitching this offer? Is it pre-recorded? So there's so many components of it.
But do you have to have all of those things? I guess,
No.
do you as an individual have to be able to do all of those things because you created the product? The product is amazing. It's beautiful. It's a great idea. But I don't know if you can be all of those things. And I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing. I would try, and all of a sudden, like I'd have a lot of it done, and then all of a sudden, I would go to record, and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know how to record. I don't know how to be direct to camera and do a sales pitch or explain something." So, wow, when it comes to communication, business communication, sales communication, wow, I really need to up my. So then I try to learn that, but then all of a sudden, there's like online copy, which is like online writing that needs to convert, and it's very different than conversational language that converts. So, um, man, it's like I think I would like you don't know what you don't know until all of a sudden you're further along, and then there's a whole nother world. Then it's like, well, if I need to pay for leads, now I have to do Facebook advertising or YouTube advertising, and there's all sorts of different ad campaigns. And why do you want this one versus this one versus this one? And how do you? And then that's a whole nother area of knowledge to master.
And I think dentists are that way too. They start a business. I'm a very good dentist. I have a great skill set. But then to run a business is 100 other things that maybe you're not good at. And so you have to decide, I mean, you're going to have to master some of those skills, but I don't know if you can master all of those skills because remember, most companies have more than one person. They have like a CEO and a CFO and a COO, and then there's the creative. I don't know if you can do all of those things by yourself. You've got to hire some of them out. You've got to learn some of them. I don't know. And I don't know if your personality can be all of those things either. I have an office manager who's very different than I am. And that helps me a lot because it fixes some of my blind spots. And then sometimes we get together and we're like, I have no idea how to do this. We're going to have to hire a decorator. We're going to have to hire somebody to teach us how to do this because we don't know how. And I don't know how to do this. And some of it, I have to hire somebody out all the time because I'm just not going to learn it. It's too much. And sometimes we do learn how to do it. And I like doing it. But I don't know if you can do all. I mean, you're talking about doing so many things. Running a big company like that's a lot for one person.
I think we kind of just like stumbled into this topic to where all of a sudden I think what would be great for the next one is like what's clear to me now is we need to start from like an audit of myself as a corporation or however you want to look at it. I guess just knowing yourself better to know this is what gives me energy, this is what doesn't give me energy. This is what I can outsource, this is what unfortunately is on my plate. And there still could be things that are on my plate that don't give me energy and I still have to do them. And then what are those hacks for, like you said, accountability? if it's something that you don't really love doing, but you still know you have to do it, then in order for you to do it, you need to set up accountability so that can happen. But I feel like you know yourself really well. I feel like I'm
But I
just
spent a lot
coming.
of times with the audits of, okay, so I failed here. Why did I fail? And when I stop looking at it with judgment and I just look at it, okay, so why did I fail here? Was it a lack of knowledge? Was it a lack of time? Why did I fail in this area? And then I can sort of take the next step on so I don't fail in this area. And then I also look at, okay, this was a great success. What went right here? And as you hone into those things, you're able to create more and more wins because you know yourself. There are some things I'm just not going to do. I hate them. I hate to talk on the phone. I'm not going to make phone calls. I will if I'm forced to, but I'm not going to make phone calls. So I hire people to do that because it's just not going to happen. Other things I love to do. I love to design crowns. That's fun. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that all the time. It's fun. So I have to figure out where am I going to fail and where am I going to succeed? Is this a skill I even want to bother to learn? But I don't think you can be all things to all people. That's tough.
Have you ever been wrong about
So
assessing?
much.
No.
So much. That's how I learned.
Yeah, have you ever been wrong about assessing yourself? Like, have you ever what I'm saying here is that I feel like if you correlate maybe the wrong thing early on in a certain scenario, then all of a sudden 10 years later, you're like, oh, this whole time I thought I am not good at, or I am not this type of person, but it was only because of these conditions. But I just kind of assumed like the wrong causation. And the next thing you know, you're like, oh my gosh, this whole time I wonder I still don't know with sales. Sales is still one of those things. Oh, I hate it. And yet people are like, oh, you're such a brilliant salesperson, but I hate it. And I don't know if I hate it because of, I just don't think I've had success with it. If success is the reason why I've taken that kind of as like, oh, I'm not good at it because I don't feel like I've succeeded in it. And if I did have success, if I'd be like, oh, I'm a great salesman and I love it and I could just own it, or if fundamentally there's something there that I'm just never going to identify with fully and I'm always going to have a reservation about. I really don't even know that yet.
I mean, that's a distilling it down. What is it about sales you hate? And is this a skill you can achieve, or is this a skill you should just farm out? Because that is the beautiful part about being an entrepreneur. You can farm some of this stuff out. I don't want to make phone calls. I hire people to do that because I'm terrible at sales. But it's not my skill set, and it's fine. I don't feel any need to desire to fix that. But what is it that you hate about it? Distill it down, and then is that something you want to fix or no?
So when you started being a dentist, 10 being like you were just a rock star, you knew yourself, 1 being like you had no idea. Where were you at when it comes to when it came to knowing your skills, your strengths, your abilities, not dental related skills, just like I'm running a business skills or professional skills?
2, maybe 3,
Where do you feel like you're at now?
8. I feel pretty confident I know how to run my business. Are there things I need to learn? Of course.
No, but not confident about running your business. Confident that you're like, I know I'm gifted, skilled, great, or my zone of excellence and genius is now this, where early on I just showed up. I didn't know because you were discovering who you were or that's what I'm saying. Did you always have a strong sense of who you were?
No, absolutely not. When I graduated, I just felt lost. I went to work for someone else. I knew that what I was doing was wrong. It wasn't the way I was trained, but then I was kind of gaslighted and told that this is the way it's supposed to be. You lived in an ivory tower. So, and then I was just sort of lost. I know this isn't good, but I'm not sure what good really looks like. And then I had to spend a lot of time. What is it that I want? Am I creating something that's totally new? Am I trying to follow in somebody else's footsteps? It took a long time to figure out what I wanted and how I wanted it to look, and then make it successful, because just because you want it to look a certain way doesn't mean that it's a successful model.
Okay, so just a basic take on personality tests. Early on, like Myers-Briggs,
Uh-huh.
people would be like, "Oh, what are you?" And I remember we had all these friends in our circle that were gung ho on the Myers-Briggs, and I just remember there was something inside of me of you can't define me. I don't know why. I just didn't like it. And they would try to define me, and I never felt like any of them fit perfectly. And I'm like, oh, I could see this, I can see that. And then same with the Enneagram. It's like, oh, I could see like 9, 1, 2. I know what I'm not. Like I'm not a 7, I'm not a 5, or I'm not a 6. But like there's a few that I can see, and it's never been clear to me that like this is it. But I also never liked that. I don't I've always kind of thought like, don't try to box me in. Do you feel boxed in by personality tests, or do you see it in a different way?
That's a good question. I'm like you. I always sort of vacillate between a couple of different personalities. And I wonder sometimes if as a doctor, I'm one way, as an entrepreneur, I'm one way, as a parent, I'm a different way. Maybe I want to be authentically me, the authentic dentist. I want to be authentically me, but I do think certain areas will bring out different aspects of my personality. And so, no, I guess I don't fit into any of those boxes very well.
So okay. So this is what our inner audit for next time. Which do you know? Are you available next week?
Yes, I'll be here next week.
Okay, I think I will too. Like I think it'd be a neat convergence of however we want to do it apart from it, but also like talking about some of these assessments we've taken. So we can talk about personality tests, the different ones we like, why we like them, and then at the same time, kind of reveal a little bit about how it's helping us identify. Like in the practical sense, this is all about us in our journey of stepping up, doing what we want to do, going after it. Which I wonder if we should also tell people what that is.
What is it?
Well, meaning like almost like if this was a vlog, like real world, people are like, what is the mission that they're on? Like, hey, I'm out to do this. This is what my next 2-3 years look like. And this is my process of identifying it, doing it, even giving people updates. Like,
I mean, I at the moment, I guess I'm figuring out, I'm getting clarity about that. My dream is to mentor people, is to share what I've learned and also to learn from other people, because I find that a lot of times when you mentor people, you learn so much from them too. So I guess that's my dream. It's a podcast. I'm going to be the president of our Central Arizona Dental Association. I'm hoping to do some more mentorship there. The people that I still mentor, I'm dressed up today because I'm going to a white coat ceremony for one of the kids that we mentor. He's entering medical school. So yeah, I think that's my dream. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet. Books, speaking, I'm not sure.
And you seem fine not knowing that yet.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a work in progress. And I also know that life happens. And sometimes a door will open. I'll be like, oh, that's the door I'm supposed to go through. That makes sense to me. And sometimes I have to kind of work at it, figure out what I need to do.
Okay.
What about you?
Meaning, so people know, well, I think they know, that I have this electric toothbrush company, and I don't know, there's a lot of different products that I'm excited about rolling out. But beyond that, which is funny that I'm saying beyond that, since it's called Beyond, there's a part of a community that I really want to engage, lead, and I feel like I'm just trying to get clarity on what that looks like. Maybe one of my biggest fears is that I don't want to start waving a banner ever that I can't wave for a long time. And I know that might sound weird, but it's like I want to intentionally end up where I'm going because it's what matters most to me, not because like you can leverage great marketing, great branding, best practices, and then I could be known for the guy that teaches you rock climbing. But I don't care about that. Like, does that make sense? Like, meaning I could be known for a lot of different things, but they're not really going to be at the center of me. And that's where I keep trying to discover, well, what is that? So like really quickly back to the personality test. My greatest fear when I'm taking them is like, what if I'm answering them wrong? And I know that sounds weird, but someone was saying like with ADHD, the idea that you have like a 6-lane highway, and then when you take medication, which I've still never taken, it goes down to one highway. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing that like I can think clearly. And then someone's like, yeah, but some people actually could almost have like 6 brains where they have, it's just the idea of the complexity. And that's where sometimes I feel like with roles or different gifts and talents, when I'm answering a personality test, I'm like, what if this is just one of my perspectives? And then there's another perspective that's actually very different. And I can't stand this question because I don't know the context of it. And and then if I answer wrong, it's going to tell me something about myself that may not be complete. And then it's misleading me and I can't trust it. Like, I wish there was something that could take the human error out of it. So maybe that's where you need like a psychologist.
I think you might need. And I took the Neo with a psychologist, and that was pretty helpful. One of those personality tests I actually did with a psychologist because she was able to.
Could you have taken it by yourself? Like, because I wonder.
But I got a different result.
So it really was different when someone was there that's an expert, that's qualified to.
Yeah, it made a huge difference.
Well, now everyone knows I need psychological help.
No, I think that we all need a little support here and there. And that was extremely helpful for me to hear that this is who I am, but that doesn't mean that I'm boxed in anywhere. So.
Okay, so I'd love to hear from you guys. A, if any of this is helpful. B, if that sounds interesting next week, talking about more kind of like the inner audit, some of these personality tests, how we are arriving at like kind of this is who I am. And it's scary because I've heard even Tom Bilyeu from Impact Theory say like, I am statements are very like powerful, good and bad. Because if you get them wrong, like I'm just the person that, but if you're wrong about it, it's a really bad thing. Like, oh, I don't do that. And it's like, why? But if it's aligned right and it is true, then they just help you kind of filter. That's not an opportunity for me because, but if it's wrong, like you can really be limiting yourself from what's possible. And I think that's the challenge of alignment.
I guess after all these years, I do feel like the I am statements constantly change because I changed. The season of my life changes. And who I was at 20 is not who I was at 30, is not who I am at 50. I'm changing. And so an I am statement, yeah, it's true, but maybe just today. So I don't take too much heart to it. I just believe that this is the season I am and this is what I'm doing. I am this today, but I'll evolve. We all will. So don't be so hard on yourself. You'll evolve. And the I am statement will change. I mean, think about it. Are you the same person you were 10 years ago?
Oh, see, that's a whole nother thing. It's like the whole idea, even in marriage. Kelly and I were just talking about this, where people are like, "Oh, I'm not the same person that I was."
Of course not.
Yeah, but in some ways, when it comes to like essence, I feel like I discovered my essence early on, like the heart of who I am, that's the core, and everything else is just like micro evolutions. But some people maybe never actually had that. Ooh, this is me at a core level. So when they discover that later on, it's like, yeah, I'm a different person. But I don't feel like I'm fundamentally a different person, even though I've grown. I'm still the same Shawn that woke up when I was 17, or if that makes sense, like self-identified or self-actualized early. Because I feel like when you self-actualize and realize like this is me, everything else along the way is just you leveling up, elevating yourself. But fundamentally, I don't think you ever change.
I don't know. I see things differently. I met my husband when I was 12. So I can tell you right now that I am not even remotely the 12-year-old. If I had a conversation with her, we wouldn't even see eye to eye on anything. There's so many differences.
But when did you start dating?
I was 17.
Okay. When do you feel like you might have self-actualized? But then again, that idea may not be something you agree with.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't know. There's been such an evolution on who we are and what we believed when we got married. We ran off to Vegas one night. We wrote on the back of a napkins what our dreams were as we drove to Vegas at 19. And I have to say that even though those dreams are absolutely what we wanted and what we accomplished, how we did that and what it looks like today is not even remotely what we had dreamed. I mean, I remember we said, oh, if we could make $100,000 a year, oh my gosh, that's so much money. Wouldn't that be amazing? And what if I could own my own practice in Flagstaff? Well, that's even remotely what happened. I mean, it isn't, but it is sort of. I mean, we do make good money. We worked hard at that. We did end up having 2 kids. I mean, those things did happen. But none of it, I mean, we couldn't even imagine the technology that we have today and what we would have to learn to do that. So yeah, the vision of who I am back then and today is just very different. And I'm okay with that. And when I imagine myself in 10 years, I have this vision of what I want it to be. But I also know that the world might change. I might change. I mean, so many things, I guess lots of things have happened to me. Maybe that's it. Lots of things have happened to me that have changed who I am fundamentally. I lost a child when I was in 2020 that I had raised. And that fundamentally changed my belief in the world for the good and for the bad.
Now, at a heart level, do you feel like you're like how do I 'cause the idea of like again essence of like this is Shawn, but I experienced tragedy, with my mom dying. And um it's like was I the same person afterwards? No. But was I still Shawn? Yeah. Um yeah, I don't know. I think it's just hard for me to maybe identify the difference because I agree with you in that we're evolving, we're growing, and sometimes it's like seismic shifts. We're not talking about little things like both of us with going through loss. Those are seismic changes that happened. I know even like politically, I was so fixated on this is truth 15, 20 years ago. And then when you live with two different parents and in-laws that are completely on different ends of the spectrum, and both of them just talk the same way to each other about like, oh, they're just completely ignorant and dumb and no, they're just, and you're like, how can you both be like, you can't both be right or wrong. Like there must be something in between that you're just not seeing. So it's like, I've taken way more of a open central, stance on something, but I don't know if that changed.
It does. It does.
Yeah,
It makes you different.
it does make me different, but somehow I'm still like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's yeah.
I think we're evolving, and I think we evolve a little bit every year. But I think the world also evolves, and who you are 10 years ago really changes. And you're right. Maybe you're right. There's still an essence about who I've always been. But when I look back at when I got married and today, my husband is not even remotely the same. I'm not remotely the same. And actually say we're more in love than we are today than we were back then because we didn't even know.
Wait, and what did you just celebrate?
31 years.
Oh,
I know. Weird. A lot of years.
that's amazing.
We're a good team. But we've had to work really hard to figure that out, to be a good team and to keep, like as you grow and mature, like one of us will grow faster than the other. And so we have to continue to change to meet each other's needs and to be happy.
Okay, guys, join
We've
us
covered a lot
next
today.
join
Yeah.
us next week. I don't know exactly what we're going to cover, but probably something about that inner.
And the personality. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's important. All
Okay,
right.
guys, we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to the Authentic Dentist Podcast. To join Allison and Shawn on this journey, hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode. Here's to your success. Express yourself fully. Live authentic.